Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Scene Vault Podcast, your source for all things NASCAR history. Presented by Las Vegas Motor Speedway, America's racing showplace.
It was just MB2 Motorsports. That was probably the most memorable, fun, enjoyable times that I've had in racing. I'm not really like hanging out with you today, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it something I said?
No, it's going to be something I said. Work came first before everything. Didn't matter what. Work was first. So, that being said, I don't want to do that anymore. And I wouldn't expect anybody else to do what I did for a long time. I don't know when the next race will be, but I'm looking forward to it.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future.
All right. So, from there, how many teams did you work with over the years?
Well, I've crew chief for almost 20 drivers at some point in time.
Yeah.
But let me see. So I worked with at MB2, had Nadu, and then after Nadu got hurt, we had Jason Keller drove. Then we had I had Mike Skinner. Mike Skinner drove some. Let me try to remember what year that was. Yeah, Mike Skinner drove some. Borsed drove road courses. Sat on the pole at Richmond the following year. The following race, sat on the pole at Richmond with Mike Skinner in a backup car. Cold turkey, first lap, sat on the pole with a backup car.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fun. Then we go to Sears Point with Borsed in the Army car, and we sit on the pole there with the Army car. And then the following year, I had different drivers in the Busch Clash. So Skinner drove. I forget who was the crew chief for Skinner for the Busch Clash, and I did Boris for the Clash. So that was fun. I think that was Boris's first restrictor plate race. So it was good times. Oh yeah, it was fun.
Wow. All right. So at some point, Robin gets hired to this just crazy position at NASCAR. He was the senior vice president of competition or whatever the title was. You were used to working for Robin as your boss, but what was it like working for Robin with him in that kind of position? How much advice did you try to give him?
Yeah. I kind of really stayed away from him at that point in time for a long time.
Yeah.
Like almost to a fault. Like, almost like it was a conflict of interest. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so we really, especially at the racetrack, just you never wanted anybody to think anything like that. So we really, really stayed away for a long time until we all was more comfortable about it. But we're all really busy. Like my mom used to ask me all the time, did you see your brothers? Like, nope, we're all busy. We could go weeks and never see each other.
I mean, was your relationship okay?
Oh yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
All right,
No,
all right.
We're best friends. We do a lot of stuff together to this day. So.
Yeah.
And I had my other brother Randy, who did a lot of TV and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there was times that we would go weeks without seeing each other, being at the racetrack on the same place. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Hey, you go weeks and then bump into him at the, same Applebee's or something like that one afternoon.
Now, what was it like being interviewed by your brother Randy? Did you ever try to cross him up or
no
do something
I was
silly?
always too nervous. I didn't really like doing that. I didn't really like doing that kind of stuff. To this day, still, I don't like. I'm not really like hanging out with you today, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it something I said?
No, it's going to be something I said, and I don't want it to be recorded. But yeah, but that was always enjoyable seeing him, and he was always a big supporter of myself, and he's always really positive. Randy was always really positive, and he was really into the sport. He's very up on the stats, and really, he was super knowledgeable about the whole sport. I'd say more so than just about anybody in racing these days. He was really, at that time, he was really up on who's doing what. And,
now, how did he wind up going in such a completely different direction from you and Robin and Roman? And
I don't know. Well, I always laugh like, he first of all, he couldn't change a light bulb, right? So that really hurt him from working on cars. He was really terrible with that stuff. But he grew up playing sports, and then he was always a good-looking guy, and he did modeling and some TV and stuff, and then out in California, and then when he came back to visit Robin in North Carolina, decided to stay there and started inside. I think he was the first guy to inside Winston Cup with Ned Jarrett.
Yeah,
he did that for years.
That's how I learned about this sport.
Yeah,
was from your brother and Ned.
Yeah. It was a great show. Great show.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't like. I never really liked doing any interviews with him. So I usually try to make one of his other guys do it.
All right.
Steve Burns or somebody like that.
All right. So you and I were talking before we started the interview, and you made the comment that you had attended every single race since the 1988 Daytona 500. When was your last one?
It was the last fall. September or so last fall. I can't remember.
Of 22?
Yep.
Okay.
Went to every single race, never missed one. I think it's called insanity.
It's called something.
Doing something over and over again and looking for a different result. Right. So I went to every single race and never missed one. So lots of hotel rooms.
So the decision to get out, was that your decision or somebody else's?
No, that was not necessarily my decision. No, it wasn't my decision. I worked for Dale Earnhart's team for 10 years, almost 10 years to the day.
Dale Jr.'s team?
Dale Jr.'s team.
Okay, yeah.
So, put together 60 or so wins in 10 years. They wanted to go a different direction. They didn't want to renew my contract, so I felt like maybe I just take a little break, and I never missed a race. Didn't think the racing world would spin if I wasn't there, right? So, being able to take a little time off, not feel that pressure, it really put things in perspective for me. So, yeah. And I think that's where I'm at now. Feel good about things, and I don't know when the next race will be, but I'm looking forward to it.
Now, what are you doing now? Just kind of hanging out, or are you working anywhere? Or?
No, not officially. I've done some road racing stuff. Done some road racing with my brother Robin. 24-hour race. Did that a couple years. 24 hours Daytona, Sebring. So a few endurance races. So I'm gonna do a couple of those coming up, and I don't know. We'll see what goes on from there.
So are you actively looking now?
Yeah, somewhat looking.
Okay.
But what I don't want to do is what I did before, and that's work 60, 70 hours a week. 52 weeks a year. That's what I did back then.
Yeah.
Up until the end. I mean, work came first before everything. Didn't matter what. Work was first. So, that being said, I don't want to do that anymore, and I wouldn't expect anybody else to do what I did for a long time.
All right, good deal. Anything else you'd like to get across?
DEI days, when the DEI bought MB2.
Uh-huh.
You want to talk about that?
Sure, absolutely.
That was terrible. But Ginn, Red Bull Racing, they shut down. I mean, those are Red Bull Racing shutting down. I don't know.
Now, how long were you with DEI?
Well, half a year. So they bought MB2.
Uh-huh.
Or Ginn Racing. They bought Ginn Racing.
Yeah.
Which was, that whole thing was about, I wish I could have just wrote some of these things down when I saw them and sealed them in an envelope, because I could have seen it coming. The day I met Bobby Ginn, I knew that guy was a thief and a liar. You could see it all day long. So he buys in the team. We're going to do all these great things. Then he sells out and shuts down. So he was quite the character. But I think it was a year to the day it lasted. And that same day that it closed down, it was an article in the newspaper how he was going to build his own wind tunnel in Charleston, or in Columbia, South Carolina. That was in the paper the day before he came in and fired like 150 people.
Wow.
That was a lot of bad blood for a lot of people.
Now, were you a crew chief at that time?
Yeah, I'm pretty much, that was, Ginn Racing, that was kind of my team. I ran the whole team, really. I mean, I was the crew chief for Joe Nemechek at that time, but I mean, that team was everything I built. Like, I was really responsible for almost all of it.
Now, what was your relationship like with Bobby? Or did you have one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could tell there was a lot of people. They saw this guy, rich guy, come in. A lot of people, you could just see him sucking right up to him, whether it be other crew chiefs or whatever, just buddying up with him.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to allow myself to do that. The writing was on the wall. He wasn't the right person for all that. So I was skeptical of him the whole time. And then
now, where'd you wind up after? Was that Ginn? Or I'm sorry, was that DEI?
It was Ginn. Then DEI bought it.
Okay, yeah.
And then I.
Now, how long were you with DEI? You said
until the end of that year.
Okay.
I wasn't going to.
What year was that? Who were you working with?
I was with Joe Nemechek.
Okay.
In the Army car.
Yeah.
And, we were running well up until that point, and then it really went south when the people from DEI took over. They weren't making races. They weren't running very well. They buy Ginn Racing for the points because we had cars that were further up in points. And then they immediately wanted to run the race team like they had run it before.
Yeah.
And I was so appalled about that. Like, I mean, there was some of the things that they did was exactly what they were doing and been doing and what not working. And I couldn't understand why they wanted to change, basically just do the same thing that they were doing. Like, that just doesn't make sense. You bought this team because we were running way better than you guys, and but you don't want to do anything like we're doing. So very, very difficult times. The most frustrated I've ever been in my life for however many months that was. It was terrible, absolutely terrible.
Was there ever a point in there where you said, okay, this is enough? I've been to races all these years. And as you mentioned earlier, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Was there ever a point in there where you said, okay, I am going to try something else? What kept you coming back?
Oh, the opportunity to do it and do it again. I mean, competition is, competing. That adrenaline, and it's not the adrenaline like, that it's a kind of the adrenaline is always there. It's not that you get a spike of adrenaline, like being good, going to the racetrack, being nervous about going through tech. Did you do this right? You have this covered. Like you're constantly thinking, should I put more camber in it? Should I take some out? Like you're constantly battling all these decisions around the clock. And, when you're in that, you're really doing that as you sleep. You wake up in the middle of the night going like, I'm going to take half a degree of camber out. You wake up at 3 a.m. sweating over it. And then like.
And you enjoyed that?
I don't know. Well, I guess that's what that is, like that intensity.
Yeah.
And then hoping that you're, doing it and hoping you're right the next day,
So after all that time, you still enjoyed that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Despite the pressure and the way things were going with Ginn and...
Oh, yeah, especially then, that was... And really enjoyed making something better, building something, putting together better people, making better decisions, helping other people make better decisions. I mean, that's really, what it's about, is just getting the most out of all your people, putting them in the right spot to be successful, and getting the most out of them. And when that happens, it's really enjoyable. That prior to the Ginn thing, when it was just MB2 Motorsports, that was probably the most memorable, fun, enjoyable times that I've had in racing. And everybody that was there then at that time, that have worked at other places, they've worked everywhere around the sport, in and out. When I bump into them here or there, they always say the same thing, that was the best time they've ever had in racing.
What made it so fun?
I don't know. I think we just had collectively just put together such a great group of people that it was just, there was no bickering, there was no negative stuff. Everything was a positive spin on everything, and then you can run good, and it all came together. I mean, everybody did whatever it took. That was before you could punch a clock. And everybody just did whatever. Everybody was in the game. And when that happens, when you get everybody in the game, that does whatever it takes to be better. I mean, like I said, we didn't punch a clock. People were there because they wanted to be there. And they stayed late because they wanted to be better. And when everybody was doing that, that was a really fun and positive time. And there was a couple years there that were like that. At MB2.
As good as it was, how hard did you fight to keep it together and not get sold to Bobby Ginn?
It was completely blindsided at that time. So we started out the season really well. We had the Army car. It was Army car. It was Mark Martin was driving it part-time.
Yeah.
So that was his deal. He just wanted to run part-time, do some testing. And I was like, this will be great. And we ran the first however many races. We were leading the points going into Bristol.
You won the Daytona 500?
Should have won that. We did win it. They didn't give it to us. That was,
yeah.
And we can talk about that. That's the worst. That was the race that hurts the most is that one. But if you want to start there, so we started that season, go to Daytona. And that whole week leading up to it, all the things that we did to the car to make it better, all the things Mark said he needed, every time we did something that to help him with what he wanted, it went better and better and better and better. And there was all kinds of cool things we did to the car. And this is probably not the time to talk about it. It wasn't necessarily, cheating back then. Like I was never a big cheater, like people talk about. And there was a lot of stuff. I'm twisted the rules.
Now, what's your definition of cheating?
Well, if it's a balloon animal, if you can twist it up and make a balloon animal out of it, that's not cheating. But if the balloon pops, you've cheated.
Okay.
So,
all right. I've never heard it put in those terms.
So yeah, I mean, Yeah, and we can talk about that stuff and some fun stuff. But so that week of Daytona, the Daytona 500, what year was that? 09?
07.
07?
Yeah.
See, I don't get my years mixed up. Okay, so we're going with Daytona 500, 2007 with Mark Martin, and that was beginning of the Ginn thing. We have a great Daytona going. The whole weekend's been going great. We work hard on the car, change a lot of things on the car to make it better from qualifying to the race.
Yeah.
A lot of all the things that you do for qualifying and ones you do for the race. Like we have kind of undone all the stuff, manipulated the body a ton, a lot of different things. We're having a great day. We lead forever at the end of the race. I mean, I think it was like an hour or 2 hours. We had, I think, one red flag, maybe two red flags.
Yeah.
We're leading the whole time. And come into the checkered, Kyle Busch is behind us. And he gets loose, and he slides up the racetrack, and we get too big of a lead. I mean, for crying out loud, the only time Kyle Busch has ever gotten loose in his life, he was behind us. He slides up the racetrack. We get too big of a lead. And then they get a run on us. They start crashing. Clint Boyer, I think, is upside down on fire, and they haven't thrown the yellow yet. And I'm so
now see, that's where I think he won.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
and we were leading at the start of the tri-oval, and we would have been leading at the exit of the tri-oval. We didn't lead like by a few inches for about 50 yards, and that one hurts. That would have been a great one. Who knows what Ginn racing would have been to this day if we won that race. But so the season started out like that. Mark was unbelievably good. We were finishing well, and we go to Bristol as the point leader, and Mark decides that he is going to get out of the car and take his first break, and Regan Smith gets in the car, and that's his first race, cup race ever, was at Bristol. We go on through later in the year. Things are still going good. We are not getting Hendrick motors anymore. Now we're getting DEI motors. When they bought us, DEI motors are blowing up like crazy. It was terrible. Mark was still eligible still had enough points, was eligible going into Indianapolis to make the cutoff for the playoffs on driver points. And he had missed 4 or 5 and was still eligible.
Yeah.
Indy didn't go well. We blew up like 3 motors that weekend. It was terrible. We go a couple more races into the season. We changed drivers again. We put Eric Amarillo was his first race going at Bristol. So in one season, Regan Smith's first race in Bristol, and then followed up by Eric Amarillo, his first race is at Bristol. So pretty good places to start out your Cup career is at Bristol.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how anybody would chalk it up, but that's what we did. And at that point in time, DEI had bought into it, and it was just spiraling out of control. It was terrible. And I left there, went to Michael Waltrip Racing, and I paired up with David Rudiman for a year, and that was a lot of fun. He was a great guy as well. Yeah.
Okay.
I ate it. We didn't talk about how bad Red Bull was. We didn't talk about Michael Waltrip Racing.
Hey, we can still talk. Camera's still going.
We got.
So how bad was Red Bull racing?
Unbelievably. Let me take that back. They were in position. They came in with enough money and enough attitude to do what they needed to do.
Yeah.
But they started off the whole thing wrong, trying to do it completely different than everybody else in the sport.
Yeah.
And kind of like, hey, I'm smarter than everybody else. And they really, really struggled for the first 3 years. They missed all kinds of races. So I get there in 2009, I guess. I I worked with Brian Vickers, and we really started putting things together, making better decisions, just getting rid of all the stuff that they were trying to do that wasn't proper back then. They focused on all the wrong things. Just really, really, they were really arrogant, and but I think they still would be here. And I think NASCAR gave them a hard time. I think they wanted to come in. Red Bull wanted to come in and do it their way, and that wasn't the NASCAR way. I think they butted heads and they decided to leave. But we finally got things really. It took 3 years. We started running well, sit on poles, won a race. Like we started to take a real good stand in where we were. Red Bull came in and said they're happy with it. All the executives came in and said they're really happy with whatever was going on, and they loved what we were doing. That was like in June, and then like 3 months later, they said they're shutting down. And at the time, we were a real competitive team, quality team, and I thought for sure like something.
Yeah.
Somebody will buy it up. So there's a lot of assets there. Like somebody will come in and keep it going. And I, even at the last minute, I thought it was going to continue, and it didn't. And so that's set a lot of people back.
How much crossover was there between NASCAR and F1?
Oh, at that time, almost zero.
Okay, yeah,
zero. And at that time they were. They're struggling in F1. Obviously not like today in F1, right?
Yeah.
But
I think they got something figured out.
Yeah. There was nothing. Just some of the mentality when people come over here, they just wanted to do it completely different, and it's almost like they were saying, these NASCAR guys are a bunch of idiots. Is what they're, when you come into somebody else's playground and then you tell them that they're doing everything wrong, it's pretty arrogant, and that's what they did. And it took a lot to get through that mentality, and they were foreign, so there's a lot of things. Culture was completely different from those leaders. Now, inside a race shop, there was a different. It was a different set of problems, but sometimes there's so many race teams out there that could do so much better with a little bit more money.
Yeah,
they spent so much money that it hindered them. It was never an option to not. There was not one option to not buy, get something, do something different. I mean, it was more work to spend the money that they were doing than it was if you cut the budget in half. I mean, wow. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes you go like, hey, if you need 10 things, they would just get, well, if you need 10, you need 100. And then you got to manage 100 things and you only need 10. Wow. Does that make sense? And it was, I'd like to say that's, there's people there that would agree that exaggeration of you only need 10, but you got 100, that is exactly, that's not an exaggeration. They bought 100 radiators to start the season out the last year I was there. 100. For two race teams.
At how many? At how much a piece?
Oh, back then, some of them were $40,000 a piece. You could put a new radiator in every single practice session and race. We were running a radiator one race and practicing another one race a weekend, an average weekend.
100.
So that's 70. That's 70 radiators right there, not counting the speedway radiators. There was that many radiators they bought.
$140,000 radiators.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know the math, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh no, I have friends. I don't know if you've ever talked to Chris Paulson at CNR Racing.
Yeah.
They made a lot of money.
Wow. Okay.
I know people will say that's an exaggeration, but it's not. Same thing with transmissions. hundreds of them.
So they were literally just throwing money at.
Oh, absolutely. It was the most ridiculous, insane thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Was there any kind of budget, or was it just an open checkbook?
If there was, it was so big you couldn't
Wow.
you couldn't see the end of it. It was that bad. Until you experience that, you would never. In racing, you always need more. There, they just spent it all in the wrong areas. It's unbelievable. Yep. But it turned out good. We ran well. We sat on several poles with Vickers. We were running well. Then he got a blood clot.
Yeah.
And then he had to get out of the car. And then we had merry-go-round of drivers, right?
Yeah.
And that I don't know how many drivers that year, probably 6 or 8. I don't know. So
Awesome.
that's how I get to like crew chief a lot of drivers.
Well, I don't want to turn the camera off. What else you got?
Oh, what else? I don't know. I got to keep thinking. It's whatever you want to talk about. Yeah. I mean, what other drivers? Ernie Irvan was the most spectacular driver I ever worked with. If anybody ever knew, like when he drove MB for MB2, how hurt he was, and he didn't show it or didn't let anybody know.
Yeah.
But he was driving race cars while he was really hurt. And there was no chance that he even come close to being able to get in a car these days, the way he was back then.
Yeah.
And he could still go fast. We sat a few poles, leading races. Like he could still get it done. And I know he was struggling, mentally, physically on top of that. Right?
Yeah.
He was never. I mean, I feel bad for him. I can't imagine how many concussions he's had in his career.
Yeah.
And but we saw him pull at Indy, had a chance to win that race. Come back next week, saw him pull at Martinsville. So he was still capable of doing it at a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
But just like Davey Allison, there's no telling how good he would have been if he could have stayed healthy. And Jerry Nadeau.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
All right, brother. That was really good.
Well,